Sarah Thomas thought she was marrying into a dream when she said yes to Daniel Carter, heir to a millionaire empire. But what she didn't know was that the Carter family's fortune was built on secrets so dark, her new life would soon become a nightmare she could never escape. Sarah Thomas had always believed that life had something bigger waiting for her. Growing up in a small town, she often imagined what it would feel like to step into a world of luxury, far from the struggles she had known. That chance came when she met Daniel Carter at a charity gala where she had been working as a volunteer. Daniel wasn't just charming. He was the heir to one of the richest families in the city, the Carters, who owned hotels, estates, and businesses scattered across the country. For Sarah, meeting him felt like stepping into a fairy tale she had only read about. Their romance moved fast. Daniel showered her with attention, gifts, and promises of a future filled with everything she had once thought impossible. The Carters welcomed her with polite smiles and extravagant gestures. When Daniel proposed, the engagement became a social event covered by newspapers and magazines, showcasing Sarah's transformation from an ordinary girl to the future daughter-in-law of a powerful dynasty. On the day of the wedding, the Carter mansion glittered with chandeliers, flowing champagne, and the presence of politicians, celebrities, and influential figures. For outsiders, it was a story of love and luck that belonged in fairy tales. Yet, even in those early moments, Sarah noticed details that didn't quite fit the perfect picture. The family members were gracious but distant, always careful with their words. Certain questions about their businesses were quickly dismissed. During the reception, she caught glimpses of guarded expressions, as if behind the laughter and toast lay secrets that no one dared to speak aloud. Still, overwhelmed by the grandeur of it all, Sarah ignored the unease. She had just entered a world of power and wealth, but what she didn't realize was that this perfect beginning was only a carefully crafted illusion. When Sarah moved into the Carter estate, she expected an adjustment period, but what she encountered felt more like stepping into a different reality. The mansion was breathtaking, endless hallways, towering staircases, and rooms filled with priceless antiques. Yet, the beauty of the place was overshadowed by a set of rules handed to her almost immediately after she settled in. They weren't suggestions or traditions, but strict guidelines she was expected to follow without question. She was told never to enter the west wing of the house, never to ask about her father-in-law's late-night absences, and never to skip the weekly family dinners, where only certain topics were allowed. To her, the rules felt strange, but in her desire to fit in, she brushed them aside as quirks of a wealthy, old-fashioned household. The more time she spent inside the estate, the more unsettling it became. The staff walked quickly through the halls, avoiding eye contact, speaking only when spoken to. Some seemed frightened, as if a single mistake could cost them more than just their job. Sarah also noticed how the neighbors rarely visited. Whenever she mentioned the Carters outside the mansion, conversations grew tense, and people changed the subject. Friday nights were the most peculiar. Without fail, large unmarked trucks would arrive at the estate. They entered through the back gate and vanished into the restricted areas of the property. Sarah was told they carried supplies for the hotels, but she never saw any of the goods being unloaded. Instead, the vehicles would disappear for hours and leave silently in the dead of night. What had once seemed like harmless family traditions began to feel like invisible chains. The Carter estate was not just a home. It was a place ruled by secrecy, silence, and fear. One evening, while Daniel was away on a business trip, Sarah's curiosity overcame her fear. The west wing of the mansion had always been forbidden, its doors locked and watched carefully. That night, however, she found one of the doors slightly ajar. Her heart pounded as she slipped inside, moving through a hallway that felt colder and darker than the rest of the estate. At the end of the corridor, she discovered a grand library, lined with shelves of leather-bound books. Something seemed off. Against one wall, she noticed faint scratch marks on the floor, as though something heavy had been moved repeatedly. She pressed against the paneling and, to her shock, a hidden door swung open to reveal a staircase leading underground. The air grew damp and musty as she descended. At the bottom, she found herself in a basement that looked nothing like the elegant rooms above. The walls were lined with metal cabinets and filing drawers, and the dim glow of surveillance monitors filled the space with an eerie light. The screens showed different parts of the estate, including the staff quarters and even her own bedroom. It was clear she was being watched at all times. Drawn to the cabinets, Sarah pulled open a drawer and uncovered files thick with documents. They contained bank records, coded ledgers, and lists of names she didn't recognize. Some folders were labeled with photographs of people who looked familiar, faces she remembered from news reports about missing persons. Each photograph was marked with a red slash across it, as though it were a checklist of those who had vanished. The deeper she looked, the worse it became. Every discovery pointed to one terrifying truth. The Carter family's wealth wasn't just built on business success. It was tied to secrets too dangerous to imagine. After that night in the basement, Sarah's world shifted completely. She could no longer see the mansion as a beautiful home. It had become a gilded prison. She tried to convince herself it was a mistake, that perhaps the documents had an innocent explanation, but the images of those marked photographs haunted her every waking moment. Her first instinct was to leave, but she quickly realized escape was not simple. Every door leading outside was locked with coded systems, and every gate was guarded. Even when she thought she was alone, she felt eyes on her, as though invisible watchers tracked her every move. When Daniel returned, she cautiously hinted at what she had found, hoping he would deny it or explain away the sinister discovery. Instead, he smiled coldly and told her she must have misunderstood. The next day, Sarah noticed her phone was no longer functioning normally. Calls cut off midway, her internet access slowed, and private conversations with friends were somehow repeated back to her by family members. It dawned on her that her devices were being monitored. Soon after, a driver began following her everywhere she went, claiming it was for her safety. Her attempts to confide in the household staff were met with blank stares and nervous silences. They too were trapped, bound by fear. Sarah realized she wasn't just living under strict rules. She was being controlled, watched, and silenced at every step. The grand estate, which had once felt like a dream, revealed itself as a carefully designed cage. With each passing day, Sarah felt the walls closing in tighter. She had become more than just a bride in a wealthy family. She was a possession, a piece of the Carter empire, and the deeper she sank into their world, the clearer it became that they had no intention of ever letting her go. Sarah's suspicions grew unbearable, and she knew she needed answers beyond the walls of the mansion. One Friday night, when the unmarked trucks arrived as they always did, she discreetly followed her father-in-law's car. Her heart pounded as she drove at a distance, careful not to be seen. The journey took her far from the city into an abandoned industrial district where a massive warehouse stood in silence. From her hiding spot, she watched as several luxury cars arrived, each carrying men with stern faces and guarded movements. Through the cracked window of the warehouse, Sarah caught sight of a meeting that confirmed her worst fears. The Carters were not discussing hotels, real estate, or legitimate business ventures. Instead, the conversations revolved around shipments, coded numbers, and territories. Boxes stacked against the walls were filled with items she recognized from news reports about stolen goods. Even worse, she saw groups of people escorted inside, frightened, desperate individuals who seemed to have been trafficked. The sight froze her blood. It was then she understood the truth. The Carter fortune was not a product of generational success, but of organized crime. Their hotels and businesses were simply a polished front, a cover for activities far darker and more violent than she could have imagined. The family was deeply entwined with illegal gambling, smuggling, and human trafficking, their influence spreading silently across the region. As she crouched in the shadows, Sarah realized the danger of what she had stumbled upon. The family she had married into wasn't just secretive or strict. They were predators, protected by wealth and power. And by becoming Daniel's wife, she had unknowingly tied her fate to theirs. The glittering empire she once admired was built on misery, blood, and fear, and now she was trapped in the very heart of it. Sarah could no longer carry the weight of what she had uncovered. Every night she lay awake, listening to the creaks of the mansion, wondering if footsteps outside her door meant someone was coming for her. The documents, the surveillance, the warehouse, she knew too much. She decided her only chance at freedom was to expose the truth. Quietly, she gathered evidence. Copies of financial records, photographs of the files, and handwritten notes about what she had witnessed. With trembling hands, she passed the information to a trusted journalist who promised to investigate and publish the story. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a flicker of hope, but that hope vanished almost instantly. Days later, The journalist disappeared without explanation. His articles were never released, and his name was scrubbed from online platforms. Sarah's chest tightened with dread. She had underestimated the Carters' reach. They weren't just powerful in business. They had influence that stretched into the media, law enforcement, and government. No one could help her. Soon after, Sarah's life unraveled. She noticed her belongings being quietly packed away by staff members. Daniel told their friends and neighbors that she had chosen to travel overseas for an extended vacation, but Sarah knew the truth. This was her erasure. She was being written out of existence, just like the missing faces she had seen in the family's files. What happened to Sarah after that remains a mystery. Some whispered she was sent away under a new identity. Others believed she met the same fate as those marked photographs in the basement. The Carter mansion stood proudly, its family smiling at galas and charity events, their empire only growing stronger. Yet behind their polished image lingered a chilling silence, one that kept Sarah's fate buried forever.